Hi and welcome to Inside View. I'm your host Joel Metzger, and joining me on this show is Merita Callaway, who is our District 3 Supervisor and is in the general election to continue in that role. Merita, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Joel.
Pleasure to have you on. Thank you for making the time for us.
Yeah, this is a new role as a candidate versus the supervisor.
That's right. We generally talk. You are still the supervisor, to be fair.
I am and will be.
Coming out with confidence. I like it.
Yes.
So you prevailed in the primary to get one of the top two spots, and you're looking toward the general this fall and looking to retain your seat. So how are things going with the campaign so far? How do you feel about things?
Well, I'm doing strategy now. I think that's important, and I plan on winning November 4th. It's my daughter's birthday that day, so that's a good sign. And I think it's going to be a healthy campaign. There's definite differences between the other candidate and myself, so the community will have a choice. I believe that I bring the skill set necessary to move us forward as a district and as a county.
Okay. And I know that this fall we're going to hope to get everyone back in for, maybe even all the candidates together so we can give the voters a direct comparison. But until then, I want to introduce anyone who hasn't met Merita Callaway or seen you on a previous show to our viewers. So if we could go all the way back to how you first decided to get into politics, what made you make that decision?
Well, it was a serendipity moment for me. I had just left PG&E, and I wanted to buy an art gallery, and it wasn't for sale, and there was a recall going on. Electeds don't like using that word, so I kind of choke on it. And I didn't really know anything about it, and I had always been political, always been involved in the political arena, usually in the back room, licking envelopes, making phone calls, walking precincts. And I thought, why not? And so there were 4 of us that ran, and it's different than like we had in the primary. You had to get 50% plus 1 not to have a runoff. For the recall, if the incumbent lost, then it's the top vote getter.
Oh, and it's just 1.
So yeah, so whether you got 20%, depending on how many voters there were, or candidates running. So it was the top vote getter, and I was the top vote getter. So I became supervisor, and I served a year and 3 months on the former supervisor's term, and then ran for my own 4-year term, my own seat.
And how long have you been a supervisor now?
Since September '93.
All right. Very cool.
27th.
So you have quite a bit of experience in
Yes.
that seat for sure. You're now the longest serving supervisor on the board.
Correct.
I think Tryon had you beaten out on that until recently.
Tom had me beat, and he still has me beat.
Right.
Tom had, I think, 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said you worked for PG&E.
Yes.
How long were you with them?
20 years.
20 years.
Yes.
And then what are some other things you've done over your life?
Oh, I owned my own business. I had a restaurant. I worked in a bookstore. I worked in a toy store. I flipped hamburgers.
You've been a teacher.
I've been a teacher. It's where I met my husband.
Oh.
We don't need to talk about that.
Okay.
Let's get back to the campaign.
So you did win this recall. You got into office, and can you go back to that time and just kind of tell voters, what was it like to get into politics and realize how you thought it is might have been different than how it actually is when you're serving the public in that capacity?
Absolutely. What happens is you are now the conduit for issues. So it doesn't matter who's the supervisor. Whether it was me or Tom or now Cliff Edson or Debbie Ponte or Chris Wright or Spellman, you're the conduit for how people feel, what people want. You're easy. In a rural county, we're easy, accessible. At least we should be accessible. And it's different, it's easier to get to us than to Sacramento. whether it's at a concert or a telephone or at the boardroom. And so it's really important in a rural county that you're connected to your community and to the county as a whole.
And how do you go about doing that?
I'm at a lot of things. I'm out all the time. I have office hours on Friday in Arnold, at Monday in Murphy's. I belong to committees. I went to the car show. I went to the duck race as the fundraiser. You know, I went to a concert at Cedar Center. I went to the concert at Tommy's Backyard up at Camp Connell. I mean, you're just out, and people call you and they want to meet with you, and you meet with them at the coffee shops. Or I usually like doing coffee. It's
You can't go wrong
easier.
with coffee.
Can't go wrong with coffee, especially local.
Do people understand that when they bring something to you, you can't necessarily just fix it, or do they expect you to be superwoman?
I am, yes.
I didn't say you were, but do people expect you to have more power than what you do?
I think they expect me to work with them to resolve the issue. I mean, if I had somebody who wanted to start a business, so they came to me and I told them what they had to do, they told me where they wanted to start the business. So I looked up what the zoning was. Does the zoning match what they want to do? Do they have to rezone? Where, about getting a business license. In fact, I went and applied for a business license for a contractor because I wanted to know the process to do that. So sometimes that's what it takes. Or recently I've gotten 2 code enforcement complaints. Well, we're not going to get out there right away, but I tell them, okay, and I go take a look, I report it to code enforcement, and then I get back to the reporting party and tell them this is what I've done. I think if you get back to people and you tell them the status, or you let them know you haven't forgotten them, be it a pothole or a barking dog or a rezone, they're fine. Most people are very respectful of just trying to connect with the process, and that's what I do.
For those who don't know how the Board of Supervisors works, can you just go over the basic functionality of the 5-member board, how voting works, when they meet, things like that?
Okay, in all the counties in California, there's 5 supervisors, except San Francisco. They have 11 because they're a city and county. So all of them have 5. They're voted on by district. And your job is legislative, it's executive, and it's judicial. It's executive in that you're enforcing the rules. It is legislative in that you make ordinances. And it's judicial in that you hear appeals. Such as what we heard Tuesday, July 22nd. We had an appeal. And they don't happen often, but when they do, we are in essence, the court of last resort, unless people want to go to court.
Right.
And so when we are up there as a board, we are voting for the county, not just for our respective districts.
And so people need to understand, while they are electing someone to represent their district, the decisions made as a board affect countywide
Correct.
issues quite often.
Correct.
Okay. And the terms are 4 years.
4-year term.
And what do supervisors make in this county?
We make 50% of what all the other electeds make, minus the highest and the lowest. So our compensation now is about $50,000. So that means all the other electeds are making at least $100,000 or more.
And then the board chair has a slightly different
And the
salary?
board chair does, because they are the ones that represent the board. They are the ones that sign all the documents. They manage the board in terms of the meetings. And anything that requires representation from the board, it's usually the chair that does that.
And that's an additional...
I think it's an additional $400 a month.
Okay. And we have Debbie Ponte as chair
And
right
Debbie
now?
Ponte's chair. She's doing a really good job.
Okay. Meetings are usually,
Meetings in Calaveras now are the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. Plus, we each have committee assignments.
and then sometimes the meetings are at night now, is that right?
The fifth Tuesday of the month, we meet at night.
And what was the thought process going into
The
that?
impetus being that people who work all day, then they can come to our meetings, and the kids can come. I have a different take on it. If I work all day, I'm not going to go sit and listen to a Board of Supervisors meeting. And the kids are going to come to the meeting if their teachers tell them it's a government assignment. That being said, it sounds somewhat cryptic on my part, but you're taking up, it costs money to do it, you take up staff time to do it. People usually come to the meeting if they have an issue that's before the board that they care about or impacts them directly. And they don't just they have nothing else to do on a Tuesday, the fifth Tuesday of the month.
Except for a few people.
Well, our season ticket holders.
Right.
Yeah, and that's okay too. I mean, every county has them, and they bring color and they bring a challenge to the board.
Right.
I welcome that.
How well do you think the current board is functioning?
I think it's doing well. I mean, they're learning how to be a board, which is separate from, of course, campaigning, and it's separate from being a district supervisor. The budget this year went fairly smoothly. I think the board realized after last year's budget, which was their first one, that we cannot continue to spend money that we don't have. And so it went well. So they made some tough decisions. We made some tough decisions this year. We have discussions on topics, and we don't always vote 5-0. And there's several examples of where we don't 5-0. Sometimes I'm a vote of 1, sometimes it's a 3-2. I think that's healthy for the county to have a board that is diverse in their skill set and in their opinions that they bring to the discussion.
Being that you have the most experience on the board of the other members, have you played kind of an educator role in trying to bring them up to speed?
No.
Or are they kind of finding out on their own how to handle things?
That's not a fair question, Joel. No, when you're elected, you have a vision in your mind, you have passion, and you think you're going to go in and make a change. Mm-hmm. Well, then you realize that, gee, you're a subdivision of the state of California, and this rule controls you, or the Revenue and Taxation Code, or the Penal Code, or CEQA, or the Subdivision Map Act, and so you can't just go in and make the change. And supervisors, for the most part, have to learn that on their own.
Almost the hard way?
Oh, I remember when I got on the board, Tommy Taylor, I was asking all these questions. I do my questions a lot differently today, of course. And I was asking all these questions, and Tommy Taylor finally said, "Can we take the vote now?" You know, I mean, so I learned a lot from Tommy. I learned a lot from Tom Troyan. One important skill is that on controversial issues, the public and your constituents and your colleagues on the board need to know why you vote the way you do. So I think it's important that and I learned this when I got on the board, to explain your position. I mean, for most things you don't, it's pretty straightforward. But on things that are controversial in any way, it's important to explain why you're voting yes or no.
Let's give the viewers an example of that, because, and I want to talk about the budget as well, but this was a budget vote last year.
Yes.
And you voted no first.
Correct.
On a budget, and that was kind of a controversial vote because it led to other supervisors also voting no, and then it had to be called back. And
I called it back.
And eventually, you ended up changing your vote and voted yes.
Correct.
And I just was wondering,
How that came about?
yeah,
Okay. At the recommended budget, I voted no. It was a 4-1 vote of the board. So we moved into final budget, and I again voted no. I did not think it was a budget I could support. 2 other supervisors changed their mind. One of them said I was grandstanding. Well, anybody who has watched me or knows me, I don't do that. But whatever, that's what his was. And so another supervisor said, well, I'm changing mine too. So it was okay. It was a 2-3 vote, so that meant the budget failed. Mm-hmm. So it reverts back to recommended budget. And I was thinking, and then District Attorney Barbara Yook came up, and we approved a grant she was getting for DUI, for an attorney and an assistant to help the attorney. And what happened was we approved this grant, but she couldn't spend the money. And she couldn't spend the money because we didn't have an approved budget for her to spend it. And so what went through my mind was, well, we have to have an approved budget per the Budget Act in 5 days or 6 days, whatever it was. I said, I guess I could call I was the chair. I could call the board back into budget hearings, and we could go through the charade of budget and manipulating figures or deciding we're going to do this or that. And it was a waste of time. It was a waste of staff time. And I felt like that was inappropriate. So everybody knew my position. That was out there. And so I brought the issue back and said, I will vote to support the budget. I believe everyone knows how I feel. And I'll entertain a motion. And we move forward.
What were your objections to that budget?
The objections were we were spending money and we were approving positions that we didn't have the money for. The spread between income, revenue, and expenses was growing wider and wider, and we needed to make the difficult decisions. You don't tell departments that you will fund their positions when you don't have the money to do it. So,
and yet that passed and put us in a situation with this last budget or the current budget where we are $8 million in deficit. And
correct.
So I guess I can understand your vote back then, but now we're still in a really bad situation. I know that there's kind of a plan that's been put in place, but bringing it to what's going on right now, can you update the viewers on where we're heading as a county fiscally?
The good news is the assessed value of properties is going up. The County of Calaveras, the Board of Supervisors, out of every property tax dollar that they pay, you pay, I pay, we get 16.7 cents. And I pay for all county-funded services. I pay for the jail, the district attorney, probation, the grand jury, the auditor, the assessor, the elections, the supervisor. All of that out of 16.7 cents.
General fund money.
It's general fund money. It's referred to as general fund money. Health and Human Services is paid for through the state, through state funding. The building department's paid for through permit fees. And if they need money, I guess we could give them general fund money. Planning department, general fund money, is out of 16.7 cents. So what we did this year is we fund vacant positions. And some of the vacant positions we canceled because the department said so. Some of the vacant positions in the sheriff's office and the district attorney's office are put in what I call the parking lot. And they're just there. We don't have to report them to the state. So when people compare us, and counties do it all the time. They compare themselves to each other, and how they do it is through their positions that they have. So we don't have to do that. So if the sheriff or the district attorney gets funding from a grant, or they get funding from the general fund, they can just pull one of the parking lot positions and put it in their approved positions. They're already there, they're just not funded. So I was impressed that the board bit the bullet this year on holding expenses.
And based on the CAO's roadmap, how many years will it take until we get back to a balanced budget?
Minimum 3 years.
But that kind of depends on what happens with property values.
Property values, transit occupancy tax is up.
TOT.
TOT, sales tax is up. So the economic indicators that things are turning around are positive. Permits are up. And in District 3, we have the most permits. And in District 3, we provide the most TOT money to the county. But, I mean, it's county revenue, not just District 3. So there are signs that the economy is moving. We don't like to think it, and especially when you see empty store spaces, you think, gosh, things still need to improve. And yeah, they do. And that's happening. I have a case, a couple wanted to move here. They wanted to buy a building. It needed rezoning. They wanted to know what I thought. I told them what I thought the yellow flags were. I didn't think there were any real red flags. And that I would help them through the process if that's what they want to do. They did. They went through I told them how long it would take, and I explained why. And they have now bought the building, and they now have a business in Arnold. That's what I do.
Let's talk about the economy, because that's something that is on almost everyone's mind.
Yeah.
And I know Calaveras County has struggled in terms of unemployment numbers and just business in general. We don't necessarily always have an abundance of jobs around here. And even if there is a job, it's not always high paying. So what is the role of the supervisor in these issues?
Well, I don't have the magic wand. It has to be a partnership. It's important that the board has the right zoning available for businesses, a host of it, whether it's an industrial business or whether it's a commercial business, that we have the zoning throughout the county for people to move into that. We cannot offer tax incentives. You don't do that. You're not allowed to do that in California. And it's important that we try and find partnerships. We find opportunities. I'm on Central Sierra Economic Development, and we submit a plan that lists projects for everybody, all the joint power, the counties and cities that are part of Central Sierra. And we submit a comprehensive economic development plan for projects. And when funding becomes available, we have a project, we can pick it up and go for it. Your new employer, CCWD, had a project for the Vallecito sewer plant. They had the project. When funding became available, they could pick that project and put it in and apply for the funding. They didn't have to plan. They already had it. Planning's an integral part of economic development.
Since we're getting close to being out of time, I wanted to ask you a couple rapid fire round questions, just so we can get a couple more things covered.
Got it.
So one is, there was a recent vote by you to not approve a zoning change down in Valley Springs.
Correct.
And I just want to give you a chance to quickly.
Okay, quickly. All right. I support the project. The property's commercial, should be commercial. It's in the what you call the heart of Valley Springs commercial area. That's appropriate. I didn't vote for it because it was bad from a planning point of view. It was on Highway 26 next to Ace Hardware, that's now owned by the Sender family. and it's owned by one person. Anyway, trying to make a more long story short, I felt it was bad planning. I felt that the county was being caught in the middle of something we shouldn't have been. It should have been between the developer and Caltrans. Once they worked out what was acceptable, they come to us to do the parcel split. Totally supportive of all of that. I just felt from a planning point of view it was not well done, that the potential for litigation and the county being part of that is great. I mean, the developer's already said that he might sue Caltrans. Caltrans has said he might get on the county. Normally things like that don't bother me, but in this case it was poor planning, and we shouldn't be in the middle of it. The project was right.
Question 2. Are you still in support of wild and scenic designation for the McCall?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and that'll be visited coming up next week with the board.
On the 29th or the 5th Tuesday of the month, correct.
Question 3. Are you...
Do you know, you don't want to know why or what the homework I did? That's
well,
all right, never mind.
I do, but we don't have time.
Okay.
Final, just the minute that we have left, what's the status of general plan? When might the public get a look at a document?
Okay, this summer, the general plan, the administrative draft will be out to county council and to the planning department to review, make any changes that they feel that are appropriate for Calaveras, send it back for corrections, and then hopefully the draft will be out to the public at the end of this year. And then we need to do after that, the environmental impact report, and that goes out. So, and I want to be on the board to sign off on the general plan.
That would be fantastic. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Okay, I guess in the final few minutes that we have, I wanted you to talk about what you would plan to do if elected as you know, your roadmap.
Okay, my roadmap is land use issues. The second, another high priority constantly for me is constituent issues. I probably spend 80% of my time on constituent issues, and those are important. Trying to find opportunities to partner. Excellent example. Bill Cooper of Ron Cooper Engineering had this partnership to have with the county road department, and it's going to happen. Okay. Did I go too long?
We're just out of time. So if people want to reach you via your website.
I'm in the phone book.
In the phone book.
I have a website, and I'm at Arnold on Friday at the library and Murphy's Fire Department on Monday.
Okay. Marita, thank you as always for joining us.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining me on this edition of Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger, and I hope you join me next time.